What if I told you that according to some of the most fascinating metaphysical readings of the 20th century, Jesus Christ had not one, but 30 incarnations before the story we all know from the Bible? That the soul we recognize as Jesus has been guiding humanity's spiritual evolution for over 100,000 years. Has this ever happened to you? You're reading the Bible or hearing the familiar Christmas story, and something inside you whispers that there's more to the story, something deeper, more ancient, something that connects to the very origins of human consciousness. Stay with me until the end of this video, because we're about to explore one of the most remarkable spiritual claims ever documented. Edgar Cayce's readings on the past lives of Jesus Christ. Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, conducted thousands of psychic readings while in a trance state, including several that detailed what he claimed were the previous incarnations of Jesus. What you're about to discover might surprise you, challenge you, or perhaps even resonate with something you've always sensed intuitively. But before we continue exploring this fascinating spiritual timeline that spans from ancient Atlantis to biblical times, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how spiritual seekers from across the globe come together to explore these profound mysteries. According to Cayce's psychic readings, the journey of the soul we know as Jesus began long before the manger in Bethlehem. His first known incarnation was as a spiritual being named Emilius in Atlantis, over 100,000 years ago. Yes, you heard that correctly, Atlantis. In this incarnation, Cayce suggested that Emilius served as a spiritual leader during a critical time in human development, helping to guide early humanity through significant evolutionary changes. This is where our journey begins, but it represents just the first step in what Cayce described as a series of 30 incarnations, each building upon the last, each bringing this soul closer to its ultimate purpose in Bethlehem. Think about that for a moment. If these readings contain any truth, they completely transform our understanding, not just of Jesus, but of human spiritual evolution, reincarnation, and the purpose of individual souls within the greater cosmic plan. But why would a soul need 30 lifetimes of preparation? What mission could possibly require such extensive earthly experience? And what might these alleged past lives of Jesus teach us about our own spiritual journeys? If revelations like these resonate with something deep inside you, subscribe to this channel, because we're just scratching the surface of what Edgar Cayce discovered about consciousness, death, and the eternal journey of the soul. Now, when we dig deeper into this cosmic narrative, we encounter Emilius, a fascinating spiritual entity that represents the first expression of divine mind on earth. This isn't just some minor character in our creation story. Emilius stands as the pioneering consciousness that bridged the gap between pure spirit and physical manifestation. The journey of consciousness incarnating into physical form required an intermediary, and that's exactly what Emilius represents. Think of Emilius as the architect who understood both realms, the blueprint of divine intelligence and the emerging physical dimension of Earth. This spirit being essentially served as the translator between pure thought and material expression. What's particularly mind-bending about this revelation is how it transforms our understanding of human origins. The hidden truth here is that our physical form wasn't randomly developed through blind processes. It was intentionally designed. Emilius helped create the human body as we know it today, working with the foundational elements of Earth to craft a vessel capable of housing consciousness. This design process wasn't simple or quick. It unfolded across vast epochs as the human form was gradually refined to become the remarkable biological system we inhabit today. The body needed to be sophisticated enough to express the complexity of consciousness while being resilient enough to survive in Earth's challenging environment. The implications of this perspective are profound for our self-perception. When we look in the mirror, we're not seeing a random collection of cells that happen to organize this way. We're witnessing the masterful creation of a divine architect. Our bodies represent the culmination of intentional spiritual engineering designed to house our essence. What's fascinating is how this ancient understanding aligns with certain aspects of modern quantum physics. The recognition that consciousness and observation play fundamental roles in how reality manifests. The revelation about Emilius suggests that consciousness didn't emerge from matter. Rather, matter was shaped to express consciousness. This shifts our entire relationship with our physical form. Instead of seeing the body as something separate from our spiritual nature, we can recognize it as the perfect instrument created specifically for our consciousness to experience this earthly dimension. The body becomes not just a biological machine, but a sacred vessel designed with divine intelligence. Our physical senses, our capacity for movement, our ability to create and express. These weren't accidents, but intentional features incorporated into our design. Emilius helped craft a form that would allow us to fully participate in and contribute to the evolution of life on Earth. I want to go even deeper into how this understanding transforms our relationship with our physical existence. When we grasp that our bodies are the product of divine design rather than random chance, it fundamentally alters how we inhabit and care for these remarkable vessels. If you're connecting with this perspective on our origins, type divine design in the comments below. What's particularly fascinating about Enoch is that he represents one of the earliest documented spiritual transformations in human history. As the first great spiritual teacher, his journey carved a path that would later be followed by countless mystics, prophets, and seekers. When we look at Enoch's story through this lens of incarnation, we start to see patterns that would later manifest in Jesus's ministry. Enoch lived in a time when spirituality was primarily oral tradition. The revolutionary shift came when he authored the first written spiritual texts, essentially creating the blueprint for how divine wisdom could be preserved through generations. These texts didn't just disappear into the sands of time. Fragments and references survived, eventually finding their way into the Dead Sea Scrolls, where scholars discovered surprising parallels to much later Christian teachings. This connection reveals something profound about spiritual evolution. How wisdom doesn't simply appear out of nowhere, but builds upon previous foundations. The soul that inhabited Enoch's form was laying groundwork for revelations that would take humanity thousands of years to fully comprehend. When we examine these ancient writings, we find sophisticated concepts about consciousness, divine nature, and humanity's purpose that seem centuries ahead of their time. What makes this particularly compelling is how these teachings resurfaced throughout history in different forms, always adapting to the cultural context while preserving core truths. This isn't just about religious history, it's about the persistence of spiritual insight across the boundaries of time and culture. The hidden connections between Enoch's writings and later spiritual movements suggest a continuous thread of awakening woven through human consciousness. Think about it, these weren't just abstract philosophies. They were practical frameworks for understanding reality that influenced how entire civilizations developed. The impact of these early writings rippled outward, shaping thought systems that eventually became the foundation for much of Western spirituality. Yet most people remain unaware of this profound lineage that connects our modern understanding back to those first recorded spiritual insights. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how these ancient teachings anticipated scientific discoveries that wouldn't emerge until millennia later. There's a remarkable coherence between some of Enoch's cosmological concepts and our modern understanding of the universe that deserves serious consideration. For those who feel called to dive deeper into these spiritual mysteries that most people never encounter, hit that subscribe button. This channel is dedicated to uncovering the profound truths that can transform how you see life, death, and everything in between. You're connecting with this deeper perspective on spiritual history. Write "Ancient Wisdom Speaks" in the comments below. Diving deeper into Enoch's true purpose brings us to a profound revelation about human potential. His mission wasn't merely about personal ascension, it was about demonstrating the possibility of maintaining divine consciousness while navigating physical existence. Think about the complexity of this undertaking, existing in dense matter while holding the vibration of higher realms. This duality created a bridge between worlds that few have mastered throughout history. This sacred work required unwavering discipline. Enoch practiced what ancient teachers called conscious remembrance, the art of remaining spiritually awake while engaging with earthly life. His journey shows us that transcendence doesn't necessarily mean leaving the physical world behind, but rather transforming how we experience it from within. The texts describe how Enoch could perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, which allowed him to interpret cosmic knowledge and translate it into teachings that ordinary humans could comprehend. This gift of translation between realms is perhaps his most significant contribution to our spiritual heritage. When we examine the figure of Melchizedek, believed to be one of Enoch's previous incarnations, we find fascinating parallels. As both king and priest in ancient Salem, later Jerusalem, Melchizedek embodied the perfect integration of earthly authority and spiritual wisdom. The name itself reveals much. Melchi, meaning king, and Sedek, meaning righteousness. He represented divine order manifested in human form. What's particularly striking about Melchizedek is how he transcended religious boundaries. Biblical accounts describe him as without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, suggesting a being who exists beyond conventional human limitations. This mysterious figure appeared to Abraham, blessing him and receiving tithes, establishing a priesthood that would later be compared to that of Jesus himself. The connections between these incarnations reveal a continuous thread of wisdom being preserved across epochs. Each manifestation served as a checkpoint in human consciousness, ensuring that divine knowledge would never be completely lost, even during humanity's darkest periods. This hidden continuity of wisdom teachers represents one of history's most carefully guarded secrets. Now I want to go even deeper into what these ancient wisdom keepers understood about the nature of reality and consciousness itself. Their teachings contain revolutionary insights about human potential that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. The implications for our own spiritual journeys are nothing short of transformative. If something in this exploration resonates with your intuition, write in the comments, "The wisdom never left us." Understanding the influence of Melchizedek goes far beyond what conventional theological studies might suggest. This mysterious figure's fingerprints appear in unexpected places throughout ancient texts. What's fascinating is how these connections have remained hidden in plain sight, waiting for those willing to look beyond surface-level interpretations. Consider the Book of Job, one of the most profound explorations of human suffering and divine purpose ever written. While traditional scholarship often leaves its authorship uncertain, there are compelling indications that Melchizedek himself may have penned this extraordinary text. This revelation transforms how we understand the book's deeper message about the relationship between humanity and the divine realm. The wisdom contained within Job reflects the same timeless perspective that Melchizedek embodied, a perspective that transcends ordinary human understanding of justice and cosmic order. The communion ceremony between Melchizedek and Abraham represents another pivotal moment in this hidden narrative. This wasn't merely an ancient ritual, it was the first documented communion ceremony in biblical history. This watershed moment established a template that would echo throughout religious practices for millennia to come. The breaking of bread and sharing of wine became symbolic gestures that would eventually form the cornerstone of Christian communion. Yet, how many practitioners today recognize that their sacred ritual traces back to this enigmatic priest-king? The journey of discovering Melchizedek's influence becomes a transformative experience. It challenges us to reconsider not just ancient history but the very foundations of spiritual practice that many take for granted. These connections reveal a continuity of sacred understanding that transcends individual religions and speaks to something more universal. What's particularly remarkable about Melchizedek's story is how it bridges seemingly disparate spiritual traditions. His presence in texts venerated by Judaism, Christianity, and even aspects of mystical Islam suggests a common spiritual ancestry that our modern religious divisions often obscure. This hidden thread weaves through humanity's spiritual journey, offering insights that could potentially heal contemporary religious divides. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how Melchizedek's principles continue to resonate in unexpected ways in our modern world. The timeless wisdom he embodied provides a framework for understanding spiritual authority that transcends temporal power structures. If these connections between ancient wisdom and modern spiritual practices resonate with you, write "timeless wisdom" in the comments. Let's explore Joseph, son of Jacob, whose life serves as a profound spiritual blueprint that would later be mirrored in Jesus' mission. The parallels are nothing short of remarkable, showing how the cosmic narrative weaves through generations, creating patterns that reveal deeper truths about our spiritual journey. Joseph was beloved by his father, given a coat of many colors, which symbolized his special place in his father's heart. This mirrors how Jesus was God's beloved son, in whom he was well pleased. But this divine favor came with a price. Joseph's brothers, consumed by jealousy, plotted against him, just as religious leaders would later conspire against Jesus. The transformation that occurred in Joseph's life reveals something extraordinary about the spiritual path. Sold into slavery for 20 pieces of silver, Joseph descended into a metaphorical death, imprisoned in Egypt, abandoned and forgotten. But this descent wasn't his end. It was preparation for an ascension that would change history. Similarly, Jesus was betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, experienced death, but rose to fulfill his greater purpose. What's particularly fascinating is how Joseph's suffering became the vehicle for salvation. When famine struck, it was Joseph's wisdom and forgiveness that saved not only Egypt, but his own family, the very people who had rejected him. This redemptive arc shows the hidden truth that often our greatest wounds become our greatest gifts to humanity. Joseph's statement to his brothers, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good," reveals the cosmic perspective that transforms victimhood into divine purpose. Now, I want to go even deeper into this pattern of divine revelation. Joseph's ability to interpret dreams connects him to the mystical tradition that recognizes how the subconscious mind receives spiritual impressions. His gift wasn't just fortune-telling, it was spiritual perception, seeing beyond the veil of physical reality into the realm of divine intention. This same perceptive quality would later be manifest in Jesus' parables and teachings, which revealed heavenly realities through earthly stories. What makes Joseph's story so powerful is how it demonstrates the journey from ego to divine alignment. The young Joseph, who boasted about his dreams to his brothers, transformed through suffering into a humble servant leader who used his gifts for the greater good. This internal metamorphosis mirrors the spiritual evolution we're all invited to undergo, from self-centered consciousness to cosmic awareness, where we recognize our role in the greater tapestry of existence. The revelations in Joseph's life show how the divine plan often unfolds in ways we couldn't imagine. When he was in that pit, abandoned by his brothers, could he have possibly envisioned becoming second in command in Egypt? This reminds us that our current limitations never define our ultimate destiny when we're aligned with divine purpose. If you've ever experienced a situation where something that seemed disastrous ultimately led to unexpected blessings, write in the comments, "My pit became my palace." Delving deeper into Joseph's story opens a fascinating window into biblical prophecy. When Joseph finally became second in command in Egypt, he was exactly 30 years old. This seemingly minor detail carries profound significance when we realize Jesus began his public ministry at precisely the same age. This parallel isn't merely coincidental. It's one of those hidden revelations that showcases how meticulously these stories interweave across centuries. What's particularly striking about Joseph's journey is how it serves as a dress rehearsal for the greater salvation story that would unfold through Christ. Joseph's path from rejection to redemption mirrors the spiritual transformation Jesus would later embody on a cosmic scale. When Joseph told his brothers, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive," he unknowingly articulated the very essence of what Jesus' sacrifice would accomplish. The wisdom embedded in these parallel lives reveals something profound about divine storytelling. God seems to weave recurring patterns through human history, creating echoes across generations that reinforce his ultimate message. These patterns aren't random. They're intentional breadcrumbs leading to deeper understanding for those willing to follow the trail. Joseph's reconciliation with his brothers becomes even more powerful when we recognize it as foreshadowing the reconciliation Jesus would offer humanity. Both men suffered betrayal from those closest to them. Both were sold for pieces of silver. Both descended into darkness before rising to positions of glory. And both used their elevated positions not for revenge, but to offer life-saving provision to the very people who rejected them. Now, I want to go even deeper into this fascinating connection between Joseph and Jesus. There's an aspect to their parallel lives that reveals something fundamental about how biblical prophecy operates and why these patterns matter so much in understanding the bigger picture. If any part of this resonates with you, write in the comments. The pattern speaks to me. I'd love to know which of these connections you find most meaningful. Joshua represents a fascinating spiritual archetype that transcends the literal battlefield. His warrior status in biblical narratives wasn't merely about physical conquest. It embodied the eternal struggle each consciousness faces on the path to enlightenment. When we examine Joshua's journey through an esoteric lens, we discover a profound template for spiritual transformation. The 60 battles Joshua fought weren't simply territorial conflicts. Each conquest symbolized the soul's progression through different states of consciousness. The material world, represented by the lands he conquered, stands as a metaphor for the illusions and attachments we must overcome in our spiritual evolution. His tactical approach to warfare mirrors the methodical discipline required to master our lower impulses. What makes Joshua's narrative particularly revealing is how it illustrates the natural progression from Moses to Joshua, from law to implementation, from theory to practice. Moses delivered the spiritual principles, but it was Joshua who demonstrated how to apply them in the trenches of daily existence. This transition reveals a universal truth about our spiritual journey. Knowing the principles is only the beginning. Embodying them through action completes the circuit of transformation. Joshua's crossing of the Jordan River mirrors our own passage from one state of consciousness to another. The waters parting represents that decisive moment when we commit fully to our spiritual path, when we leave behind the familiar landscape of material identification and step into the unknown territory of higher awareness. It's in this crossing that we experience our first taste of spiritual sovereignty. Now, I want to go even deeper into this aspect of Joshua's journey by examining the symbolism of the walls of Jericho. This infamous battle wasn't about physical destruction, but rather about dismantling the barriers between our fragmented consciousness and our integrated spiritual nature. The trumpets that brought down the walls represent the power of vibration and sacred sound to reshape reality, a principle that resonates with many esoteric traditions across cultures. The spiritual battles Joshua fought illuminate our own inner conflicts. When we face temptation, doubt, fear, or attachment, we are essentially engaging in the same warfare Joshua conducted in the biblical lands of Canaan. His strategies for victory offer us a blueprint for navigating our own spiritual challenges with wisdom and discernment. If you've ever felt the internal struggle between your higher aspirations and your lower impulses, type warrior spirit in the comments. This acknowledgement connects us to the archetypal energy Joshua represents, the disciplined spiritual warrior committed to transformation against all odds. Let me take you even deeper into this fascinating soul journey. What many spiritual historians don't discuss is how each incarnation served as a carefully orchestrated preparation for the ultimate mission. Jesus didn't simply appear as a fully formed Messiah. The soul underwent millennia of preparation through various lives, each adding a critical piece to the spiritual puzzle. When this soul incarnated as Jasmine during Moses' time, she served as both scribe and psychic channel. This seemingly minor historical figure actually played a pivotal role in preserving ancient wisdom. Jasmine documented not just the obvious events of the Exodus, but received prophetic insights about a future Redeemer who would transform humanity's relationship with the divine. The irony? She was documenting her own future mission without conscious awareness. This reveals something profound about soul memory and divine timing. Each incarnation builds upon the previous, creating a tapestry of experience that shapes our spiritual DNA. Think about how your own past experiences, even those you might consider mistakes, could actually be preparing you for something extraordinary in your future. The transformation from Jasmine to Jesus represents one of the most remarkable spiritual evolutions documented in the Akashic Records. As a female scribe, Jasmine developed the precise communication skills needed to later articulate complex spiritual truths in simple parables. Her psychic channeling opened pathways in consciousness that would later allow perfect communion between human and divine aspects. What's particularly striking is that Jasmine lived during a time of spiritual codification, when oral traditions were being committed to writing, when humanity was learning to preserve wisdom across generations. This experience proved invaluable when the same soul later needed to establish teachings that would endure for millennia. But there's a hidden truth here that applies to all of us. Your current challenges, interests, and abilities aren't random. They're preparing you for future chapters in your soul's journey. The skills you're developing today, even in seemingly mundane contexts, may be precisely what you'll need to fulfill your purpose tomorrow. Each soul incarnation isn't just about learning lessons. It's about gathering the exact tools needed for a greater mission. The divine doesn't waste experience. Every moment of joy, suffering, connection, and isolation serves the greater architecture of your spiritual development. Now, I want to explore how these early incarnations specifically prepared the way for the revolutionary teachings that would emerge through Jesus. If you're resonating with this concept of purposeful soul preparation, write in the comments, "My past is preparing my future." The idea that Joshua's writings were completions of Moses' teachings through spiritual dictation opens up fascinating territory. Many scholars believe that biblical texts evolved over centuries through multiple authors and redactors, yet this perspective suggests something more deliberate, a spiritual continuity between these two pivotal figures. It's almost like thinking of Scripture as a divine conversation spanning generations, with certain souls designated as the receivers and transmitters of cosmic wisdom. When Cayce suggested these sequential lives formed a spiritual curriculum for the Christ soul, he was essentially describing a deliberate spiritual development program spanning thousands of years. Think about what this means for our understanding of personal growth. Most of us struggle with 5-year plans, yet here we're contemplating soul development across millennia, a masterclass in divine patience and cosmic perspective. This revelation transforms how we might interpret these biblical narratives. Rather than isolated stories, they become chapters in an intentional spiritual education, each incarnation building upon the previous one, each challenge specifically designed to develop certain qualities or understandings. It's like watching the ultimate hero's journey unfold across multiple lifetimes. What's particularly striking is how this viewpoint bridges Eastern concepts of reincarnation with Western religious figures. It suggests a hidden continuity between spiritual traditions that are often positioned as contradictory. The boundaries between religious systems begin to dissolve when viewed through this lens of soul progression. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this perspective might reveal about our own spiritual journeys. If these monumental figures were engaged in such deliberate soul education over multiple lives, what might that suggest about the purpose behind our own challenges and experiences? Perhaps our lives aren't random after all, but carefully curated experiences designed for our specific growth needs. The implications extend beyond religious history into how we might approach our own development. What if we viewed our challenges not as obstacles, but as curriculum? What if we recognized our relationships not as random connections, but as soul agreements designed for mutual evolution? This perspective invites us to see the hidden architecture behind what often appears as the chaos of human existence. If you find yourself resonating with this idea of life as a deliberate spiritual curriculum, type "soul student" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you see your own life journey through this lens of intentional spiritual development. Emilius brought a profound understanding of cosmic responsibility, teaching that our actions create ripples throughout the universe. He helped early spiritual seekers understand that evolution wasn't just physical, but profoundly spiritual. His teachings emphasized how each soul's journey contributes to the collective consciousness of humanity. Those who studied under Emilius often spoke of experiencing a sense of cosmic belonging, a realization that their spiritual development served a purpose beyond their individual lives. What made his approach revolutionary was how he connected mundane daily choices to universal significance. Imagine understanding that the way you process anger or extend compassion literally transforms the energetic fabric around you. This wasn't abstract philosophy. Emilius provided practical frameworks for living with this awareness. Working alongside him, Enoch possessed the remarkable ability to translate complex divine wisdom into teachings everyday people could apply. Think about how challenging it can be to explain quantum physics to someone without scientific background. Now multiply that difficulty by 1,000 when dealing with cosmic truths. This was Enoch's gift. He could take the most transcendent concepts and break them down into digestible, practical wisdom. Together, they created a bridge between cosmic consciousness and human understanding that transformed how spiritual seekers approach their inner work. Their collaboration reminds me of those rare partnerships throughout history where complementary abilities create something greater than either could achieve alone. The hidden impact of their work reverberates through countless mystery traditions that followed. When you examine the core teachings of various spiritual lineages that emerged later, you can often trace the fundamental principles back to these original frameworks. The language and cultural expressions might differ dramatically, but the essential revelations remain consistent. What's particularly fascinating is how their teachings on spiritual evolution anticipated discoveries in modern psychology and quantum physics by thousands of years. They understood the malleability of consciousness, the interconnection of all things, and the power of focused intention long before scientific instruments could validate these realities. This isn't just coincidence. It reveals how deep contemplative practice can access universal truths through direct experience. Now I want to go even deeper into how these ancient teachings manifest in our modern spiritual landscape. The journey of these concepts through time shows how truth can be preserved, even as its external form adapts to new cultures and understandings. If any of this resonates with your own spiritual journey, write "Ancient Wisdom Speaks to Me" in the comments below. The spiritual balance that Cayce DC maintained reveals something profound about authentic leadership. It's never about wielding power over others, but rather power for others. When we examine his approach through historical texts, we see someone who understood that true authority comes with the responsibility to elevate those around you. This hidden truth has been largely forgotten in our modern understanding of leadership, where position often becomes about personal advancement rather than communal transformation. Joseph's journey offers us another powerful revelation. His story isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about the alchemical process that converted personal suffering into exceptional compassion. Think about it. After being betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned, Joseph could have emerged bitter and vengeful. Instead, he developed an expanded capacity to understand human weakness and respond with grace. This internal metamorphosis is what prepared him to save not only Egypt, but his own family during the famine. What's particularly fascinating about these ancient figures is how they navigated impossible tensions. They held seemingly contradictory qualities in perfect harmony: strength with gentleness, justice with mercy, wisdom with humility. In our polarized world, where we're constantly pushed toward extremes, these balanced approaches feel almost revolutionary. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these principles manifest in our everyday lives. When we study these archetypal patterns, we begin to recognize them operating in our own stories. The journey from victim to victor that Joseph embodied isn't simply a tale from antiquity. It's a psychological roadmap available to each of us when we face our own trials. These ancient wisdom teachings weren't meant to be merely intellectual curiosities. They were designed as practical frameworks for human development, showing us how to navigate life's complexities with both integrity and effectiveness. The impact of adopting these patterns extends far beyond personal growth. It ripples outward to transform our relationships, communities, and potentially even larger social structures. What's striking about these ancient models is how they stand in stark contrast to many of our modern approaches to power and influence. While today's world often celebrates dominance, these traditions honored service. While we prioritize quick results, they valued character formation processes that unfolded over decades. This Perspective shift offers us a refreshing alternative to contemporary leadership paradigms. If any of this resonates with your own journey or challenges you're currently facing, write in the comments. These ancient patterns still speak today. I'd love to hear how you see these principles operating in your own life experiences. These ancient masters weren't merely preaching abstract philosophy, they were living embodiments of transformation. When we study Joshua's teachings, we find an unwavering emphasis on aligning with divine will rather than pursuing personal gain. In the most challenging moments of his journey, he demonstrated complete surrender, showing that true power comes not from controlling circumstances, but from perfect alignment with higher purpose. What's fascinating is the remarkable consistency we find across these different incarnations. Despite emerging in vastly different cultures and historical contexts, they all illuminated the same destination: perfect love. Each teacher understood that the human journey ultimately leads to this single truth, that beneath our fears, ambitions, and identities lies our capacity to love unconditionally. The revelations become even more profound when we examine how these teachings apply to modern consciousness. Our world today seems increasingly fragmented, with technology simultaneously connecting and isolating us. Yet the ancient wisdom reminds us that our fragmentation is an illusion, the appearance of separation rather than its reality. These incarnations weren't just talking about individual salvation or enlightenment. They understood that personal transformation creates ripples that extend outward. Each person who awakens to their true nature becomes a catalyst for collective evolution. In this way, the ancient teachings were never just about escaping the world, but about transforming it through our own inner metamorphosis. I've discovered that implementing even small portions of this wisdom creates immediate shifts in perception. Moments of anxiety become opportunities to practice surrender. Conflicts become chances to extend compassion. The ordinary becomes sacred when viewed through this lens of unified consciousness. What makes these teachings so powerful is their practical application. They aren't meant to be enshrined in temples or debated by scholars alone. They're living principles designed to be embodied in everyday life. Every interaction becomes a laboratory for practicing this ancient wisdom. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how these common threads of wisdom have survived centuries of interpretation and misinterpretation, and why they remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. If this perspective resonates with your own spiritual journey, write "Ancient Wisdom Speaks" in the comments section below. What fascinates me about Cayce's perspective is how he framed these higher beings' interventions not as random occurrences, but as part of an intricate cosmic blueprint designed to shepherd humanity's consciousness forward. When exploring his readings more deeply, we find a profound understanding that what appears as conflict often serves a greater purpose in our collective journey. The supposed attacks that paranormal researchers have documented throughout history weren't necessarily aimed at harming humans as individuals. Rather, they represented moments where these advanced intelligences were attempting to dispel the darkness of ignorance, sometimes forcefully, like a spiritual intervention of sorts. Think about it. Transformation rarely comes without resistance, and enlightenment often requires dismantling old thought patterns first. This revelation changes everything about how we interpret these phenomena. What if these encounters are actually carefully orchestrated catalysts designed to accelerate our evolution? The discomfort we feel might simply be growing pains as we stretch toward a higher understanding of reality. It's like when you first start exercising, the muscle soreness isn't damage, but adaptation. Cayce's readings suggest something even more profound, that these beings operate within a framework of cosmic laws that transcend our limited three-dimensional understanding. They aren't arbitrary or chaotic in their interactions with humanity. Instead, they follow patterns and principles that, while mysterious to us now, form part of the hidden architecture of existence. The journey toward understanding these beings requires us to shift our mindset from fear to curiosity. When we examine historical accounts through this lens, we begin to see patterns emerging, interventions that preceded major leaps in human consciousness or technological development. Coincidence? Perhaps not. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining specific case studies that illustrate this pattern of intervention and growth across different time periods and cultures. These examples demonstrate how what initially appeared threatening actually catalyzed remarkable transformations in both individuals and societies. If you're finding these connections as mind-expanding as I do, write Cosmic Blueprint in the comments, so I know we're on the same wavelength about these profound possibilities. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by looking at the underlying pattern Cayce discovered through his thousands of readings. This revelation transformed my understanding of what we're all experiencing through multiple incarnations. Cayce consistently found that no matter how diverse our individual paths appear, they all follow a remarkably similar spiritual blueprint. This isn't just theory, it was confirmed across thousands of readings for people from all walks of life. What he uncovered was a hidden architecture to soul development that transcends cultural, religious, or historical differences. The journey unfolds like this. Souls begin with basic lessons about physical existence, then progressively face challenges that teach essential spiritual qualities, building upon previous knowledge in an elegant progression. Every hardship has purpose. Every relationship holds meaning. This is why Cayce emphasized that there are no accidents in the cosmic curriculum. These universal patterns suggest something profound about our collective journey. We're all navigating the same spiritual terrain, just at different points along the path. Consider how this shifts your perspective on the difficult people in your life. What if they're actually playing an essential role in your soul's evolution? What if the challenges you face aren't punishments, but precisely calibrated opportunities? Behind the seemingly random events of our lives lies an intelligence orchestrating experiences for our highest growth. Cayce's archive reveals how souls who embraced their lessons progressed rapidly, while those who resisted often found the same challenges reappearing in different forms across multiple lifetimes. The most fascinating revelation comes when studying how Cayce's clients responded to understanding their soul patterns. Those who recognized and worked with these patterns experienced remarkable transformations. Relationships healed, physical ailments improved, and opportunities materialized that perfectly aligned with their soul's journey. This interconnected web of experience isn't limited to human relationships. Cayce described how even our connection to animals, nature, and the environment reflects aspects of our soul development. Every interaction becomes meaningful when viewed through this lens of spiritual progression. If you're resonating with what I'm sharing about these universal soul patterns, write in the comments, "My soul recognizes this truth." These soul patterns reveal something profound about our current moment in history. Cayce suggested we're witnessing an unprecedented wave of souls incarnating with specific spiritual missions. Think about it. Many of us feel an inexplicable pull towards spiritual growth that transcends conventional religious boundaries. This isn't random. It represents a coordinated effort on the soul level to elevate collective consciousness during a critical planetary transition. The universal soul curriculum Cayce described works much like our educational system, but with infinitely more patience and compassion. Souls encounter similar lessons across multiple lifetimes until the necessary wisdom is integrated. This explains why you might feel an immediate mastery in certain areas while struggling persistently with others. Those struggles often point to your most important soul assignments, the very lessons you've incarnated to finally overcome. What's particularly fascinating is how these individual soul journeys interweave into collective patterns. Cayce's readings repeatedly showed how souls travel together across lifetimes, creating a tapestry of relationships serving each other's growth. That person who triggers your deepest wounds. They may be playing a role you both agreed to before birth, offering you an opportunity for profound healing and transformation. The hidden truth within Cayce's work is that free will and destiny coexist in a delicate balance. While certain life events may be predetermined, meeting specific people or facing particular challenges, how we respond to these circumstances represents our true spiritual testing ground. This perspective transforms how we view life's hardships. What feels like cruel fate might actually be the universe delivering exactly what our soul requested. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how Cayce's understanding of soul progression challenges our conventional wisdom about human development. The readings suggest we're not merely physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences, but spiritual beings navigating the rich complexity of physical existence. This fundamental reframe changes everything about how we approach life's journey. What's truly revelatory is how Cayce's model of soul progression aligns with modern psychological understanding while transcending its limitations. The patterns described in thousands of readings point to an intelligent blueprint for spiritual evolution that operates regardless of whether we're consciously aware of it. If any of this resonates with your own experiences or intuitions, put in the comments. My soul remembers. Jesus' lives serve as powerful blueprints for our own spiritual development. When we examine his journey closely, we see how divine wisdom manifested through his teachings and parables. He didn't just preach abstract concepts, he embodied them. Think about how he consistently demonstrated compassion for those society had cast aside, lepers, tax collectors, and those deemed sinners. This wasn't just kindness. It was a radical demonstration of seeing the divine spark in everyone. What's particularly striking is how Jesus maintained perfect obedience to divine will, even in the face of tremendous suffering. This surrender wasn't weakness, but rather demonstrated his complete alignment with higher purpose. The Garden of Gethsemane moment, not my will but yours be done, reveals the profound transformation possible when we align with divine consciousness rather than ego-driven desires. These qualities weren't meant to remain distant ideals that we merely admire from afar. The purpose of studying Jesus' Incarnations is to accelerate our own spiritual evolution. We're being invited into a journey of practical application, not theoretical understanding. When we internalize these lessons, we begin to embody similar qualities in our everyday lives. What fascinates me about this approach is how it bridges the divide between reverence and realization. Instead of putting Jesus on an unreachable pedestal, we recognize that his journey illuminates possibilities within our own spiritual potential. This revelation shifts our relationship with these ancient teachings from passive worship to active participation in our own transformation. The hidden truth here is that by studying the consciousness behind Jesus' actions, we gain access to the same divine qualities. It's not about mimicking external behaviors, but about cultivating the internal state from which those actions naturally flowed. His life becomes less of a historical account and more of a living roadmap for navigating our own spiritual awakening. The impact of this understanding can be profound. Rather than seeing ourselves as perpetually falling short of divine examples, we recognize that we're on a continuum of the same spiritual evolution. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how these divine qualities manifested in specific moments throughout Jesus' incarnations, and what practical lessons we can extract for our modern spiritual journeys. If what I've shared resonates with your own spiritual understanding, write in the comments. Walking the same path so we can recognize each other as fellow travelers on this journey of consciousness expansion. Cayce's perspective reveals a profound truth about our existence, that everything we experience is woven into a tapestry of spiritual growth. When you understand this framework, everyday challenges transform from random hardships into meaningful chapters of your personal evolution. This isn't just positive thinking. It's a fundamental shift in how we perceive our life's journey. What makes these readings truly remarkable is their practical application. They don't just float in theoretical spiritual realms, but offer concrete pathways for personal development. Think about how different your life might be if you approached each interaction, each setback, each victory as a carefully designed opportunity for soul growth. The impact of this mindset shift can be nothing short of revolutionary. I've noticed something fascinating in my research. People who adopt this perspective often report a sense of peace even amid chaos. It's as if understanding the blueprint of your spiritual potential creates an internal anchor that remains steady regardless of external circumstances. The hidden power here isn't about controlling what happens to you, but rather about transforming how you respond to whatever comes your way. These teachings suggest that our consciousness exists beyond our physical form, continuing its journey through multiple lifetimes. This continuity provides context for many of life's mysteries, why certain people feel instantly familiar, why particular challenges repeatedly emerge, and why some insights seem to come from somewhere beyond our ordinary thinking. The beauty of Cayce's approach is that it doesn't demand blind faith. Instead, it invites exploration and personal validation. Many who study these concepts report experiencing moments of profound recognition, instances where something deeply resonates as if awakening a forgotten memory. This personal verification creates a foundation far stronger than any external authority could provide. Now, I want to go even deeper into how these spiritual blueprints manifest in everyday life. The readings suggest specific practices that anyone can implement to enhance their spiritual awareness and accelerate their growth. These aren't mystical rituals requiring special knowledge, but simple adjustments to how we approach our daily existence. If anything I've shared resonates with your own experiences or intuition, type "awakened blueprint" in the comments below. I'm curious to know how many of you have felt these deeper patterns at work in your own lives. Throughout the spiritual evolution of our soul, these 5 lives of Jesus serve as sacred waypoints, each one carefully designed to prepare us for deeper encounters with divine love. What's fascinating is how this preparation unfolds, not as abstract theology, but as lived experience. Across multiple incarnations, the journey resembles a soul transformation rather than mere religious instruction. When we examine this concept with fresh eyes, we begin to see how Christ consciousness represents something far more profound than what conventional religious frameworks typically present. Think about it. Instead of a single historical event, we're discussing a cosmic template for spiritual awakening that unfolds across multiple dimensions of existence. The progression through these 5 lives reveals an underlying intelligence to spiritual evolution that few spiritual traditions explicitly acknowledge. Each stage builds upon the previous one, gradually expanding our capacity to embody what esoteric traditions call perfect love. This isn't the idealized romantic love that dominates our cultural narratives, but rather a fundamental force of creation that transcends ordinary human experience. What strikes me as particularly significant is how this framework helps explain the varied spiritual capacities we observe in people around us. Some souls naturally radiate compassion and wisdom beyond their years, while others struggle with basic empathy. Through this lens, we're simply witnessing souls at different stages of their journey through the Christ pattern. The hidden revelation here is that Christ consciousness isn't exclusive to Jesus or even to Christianity. It represents a universal template for spiritual perfection available to every soul. This understanding bridges Eastern concepts of enlightenment with Western religious traditions in ways that honor both perspectives. As we absorb these ideas, we might recognize echoes of our own spiritual journey, moments of grace, unexpected insights, or profound compassion that seem to come from beyond ourselves. These are not random occurrences, but glimpses of our soul's progress toward embodying divine love more completely. Now, I want to go even deeper into how these 5 lives systematically develop specific spiritual capacities within us. Each life builds upon the previous one in ways that reveal the extraordinary architecture of spiritual evolution. If this explanation is awakening something within you that feels true at a soul level, write in the comments, "My soul recognizes this truth." These teachings point to something powerful, that our deepest potential often remains untapped until we face significant resistance. Cayce knew this and insisted that these principles weren't meant to be hoarded, but shared openly with others walking the spiritual path. He believed that spiritual enlightenment thrives in community, not in isolation. When we encounter the mirrors of our own consciousness in others, something remarkable happens. The journey becomes less about individual pursuit and more about collective awakening. Cayce's insights weren't meant to be hidden away like some secret treasure, but rather to flow freely between seekers, creating ripples of transformation that extend far beyond any single person. What fascinates me about these concepts is how they reveal the hidden architecture of our personal evolution. The resistance you feel when pushing toward your highest potential isn't a roadblock, it's a necessary catalyst. Think about those moments in your life when you faced the greatest opposition. Weren't those also the times of your most significant growth? This understanding fundamentally shifts our relationship with challenges. Instead of viewing difficulties as unwelcome interruptions to our spiritual journey, we can recognize them as essential components of the path itself. The tension between where we are and where we're meant to be creates the very energy that propels us forward. I've witnessed countless individuals transform their perception of challenges after embracing these principles. One woman I spoke with described it as finally understanding the language of my life's obstacles. This perspective shift doesn't make the obstacles disappear, but it does infuse them with meaning and purpose. The revelations that emerge through this practice offer profound insights into our deepest patterns and potentials. We begin to see not just the surface-level issues we're dealing with, but the underlying spiritual lessons they contain. Every challenge becomes a doorway to greater awareness, every struggle an invitation to expand. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how these principles can be applied to specific areas of your life where you might feel stuck or limited. The beauty of these teachings is that they work universally while being intimately personal in their application. If you're resonating with these ideas so far, write in the comments, "I'm ready to see differently." This will help me understand who's connecting with this perspective as we continue our exploration. If you've stayed with me through this exploration of Cayce's wisdom, you're likely someone who understands that true growth happens at the edges of comfort. I hope these insights have given you a new lens through which to view the challenges in your life. This journey of transformation is ongoing, and I'd love to continue it with you. If you found value in these perspectives, consider subscribing to the channel for more content that explores the deeper dimensions of spiritual growth and personal evolution. If something in this message resonated particularly strongly with you, drop a comment saying, "I'm seeing differently now." I'm genuinely curious about which aspects of these teachings speak to your experience. Give this video a thumbs up if you appreciated this conversation around resistance and growth. It helps others discover these ideas too. And if you're ready to take the next step in understanding how these principles play out in daily life, I've created a video that explores practical applications of these concepts. Click right here to continue our journey together. I think you'll find it illuminates the path even further.